For Colonel Herbert Jones, I had this question, sir, if you would mind. From your perspective and experience in operating a flight school, which is called Cloud Club 2, over there in Prince George's County, what are the issues facing younger African Americans in aviation?
Okay, I'd like to correct something first, if I may, on the program. It lists me as colonel in the Air Force, as retired from the Air Force. That is incorrect. However, I did retire from the Air Force Auxiliary as a lieutenant colonel. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that's a typographical error there. Okay, now to answer the question, one of the biggest drawbacks in aviation, is whether it relates to young folks or older folks, as far as general aviation is concerned, is the price, the price of flying. We find that there are a lot of young people who have an interest in flying, but they don't have the money. And what happens in a lot of cases when people get old enough to afford to fly, sometimes they're so old until they can't pass a physical examination. So it's a real tough situation. But as far as minority youngsters are concerned, it's also a matter of them being exposed to aviation, to realize that there is some future in aviation for them. And of course, things are beginning to change now. However, things could be much better. As it stands today, there are some 60,000 airline pilots. Of the 60,000 airline pilots, less than 1,000 of these people are black folks. So we are making progress, but still there's a lot to be done.
Thank you very much, sir. Now this question is for Colonel Saul Harp and also for Colonel McGee. What should we be doing to encourage more African Americans to seek both civilian and military careers in aviation? And specifically, how can we diversify the operations of running airports? Gentlemen, go ahead.
I take it you want me to go first? Yes, I think the importance is mentoring and pointing out the opportunities that are available. Dollars are important, but so you even have to talk what kind of salaries are available in the aviation field, the various fields. But we need to seek ways to introduce those youngsters too. As was said, they're not in the environment that brings out aviation, but those of us working in and around the fringes of aviation need to reach out to youngsters in the community and give them that opportunity and introduction.
Thank you, sir. And Colonel Harp?
From my experience, being in the Air Force, particularly before I went in, there was very, very few of us blacks that did go in the Air Force. I came in during the Korean War. But today in time, you find that we have the junior ROTCs in the various high schools. I've had the opportunity to give speeches at these schools, and I found there's a tremendous amount of interest. That is a lead-in today for our young people, both our young women as well as our young men, to have the opportunity to learn what are the opportunities in the Air Force, or basically in the military. My experience in itself in the Air Force was exciting. It was tremendous. I came in right after the Tuskegee Airmen in 1952, right after the integration in the military, particularly the Air Force. It was a challenge. In my pilot training class of '82, I was the only black in the class. So it was an experience for me. Fortunately, my classmates, we all came together as one, and I had the opportunity to be trained and become a pilot in the Air Force. I'm a fighter pilot. I'm a bomber pilot. I'm also a jumper. I went through the Army jump school down at Fort Benning, Georgia. Why I ever did that, I don't know. But you hear the old cliche, you don't jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But I was indoctrinated that we in the Air Force had to be able to relate to the Army, and I think it was the wisdom of whoever came up with the idea. I thought it was tremendous. But to just keep it short, to paraphrase, the opportunity in the Air Force, as well as the other military today, is that someone in their wisdom has sought out to bring the kids who are in high school and to train, become familiar with it, to tell the advantages. So I hope this will continue.
Excellent. Thank you very much. My next question is for Mr. George Walker III. George, can you reflect upon your experiences in the training, the flight training school at Tuskegee Airfield back there in World War II, and on your current activities in the East Coast chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen Corps?
Well, you know, when the war started, I was getting ready to graduate from college, Wilberforce University in Ohio, an old black historical college. And I also was in the senior ROTC program. So that when I graduated, I went backstage, put on my officer's uniform, got my commission, and before I could really rejoice about it, they stuck orders in my hand and told me to report for duty. So I had to leave my mother and father and family and go into duty. They didn't know what to do with me at that time. This was the Army, infantry. So they sent me to one camp down in Kentucky, and for 3 months I did nothing. You know, they had a day off the day I got there. They couldn't imagine a black officer walking in and we looked sharp. We made sure of that, see? So after 3 months, they sent me down to Kentucky to Fort Knox, and again, this was the Armored Corps. They didn't know what to do with me. And the commanding officer, I had to report him every morning at 8 o'clock, and he'd say, you have the day off. And that went on until finally, and really, you know, I got to dislike it very much. And the only interesting thing I'll tell you, and I'll go on, is that, of course, those were days of segregation. In Louisville, Kentucky, you couldn't, of course, go into white hotels. And there was this hotel that I was determined I wanted to get in there, in the lobby, because it was a, you know, historical thing. So I had on my dress uniform, and I stood in front of the hotel, and all of a sudden this limousine drew up. The chauffeur got out, opened the door, and this white lady got out, and she said, boy, come over here and take my bags. Well, I did, because I knew I could get in the hotel with the bag, see? So I did. I took the bag, went in the hotel. She slapped a $20 bill in my hand. I said, thank you, and I cut out. The sequel to that is I became friendly with the first black legislator in Louisville, Kentucky, and he and I were strolling by the same hotel, and this same lady came up, and she put her arm around this black outstanding lawyer. And she said, she looked at me kind of, you know, I said, yeah, I'm the guy. And later on, he said that she had apologized to him, that she thought I was the doorman of the hotel, because I had this, you know, jazzy uniform on. But anyway, I went to help form the 92nd Buffalo Division, and we ran through the same segregation. Could not go in the officers' club and so forth. So I put in requests for training at Tuskegee Airmen, and just as the orders were coming through for my division to go overseas, I got orders to go to flight training. And that's how I got into the Tuskegee experiment. Since then, I belong to the East Coast chapter, and you see he and I in these red jackets. It's our official dress uniform. And whenever we make public appearances, we try to look right, sharp. So we wear the red jacket, a white shirt, black tie, and the black trousers. My chapter has 3 programs. We give $30,000 to $40,000 in scholarships every year to seniors in high school. We have what is called an Aerospace Careers Day at Andrews Air Force Base every year, and some 2,000 children are bused in there by the various school jurisdictions. They're able to get on all the various planes. We lecture, show, film, and so forth. And we also support a training program for civilian air patrol. We support it entirely, furnish the young men the uniforms, and we give them instructions. We set them around the country. So we are doing something to try to interest the young people to go into the aerospace industry, aviation, and all supporting things.
Very good, Herbert. Thank you. My next question is for Commander Jim Jackson. Jim, I'd like to ask you, sir, what is your current perspective of the aviation situation in the Navy, and how do you view the training that is going on over at the Naval Academy?
Well, a little bit of history. The first black to fly in the Navy was in 1948. So during the entire World War II, there were no black naval aviators at all. You've seen all those movies on the History Channel showing the aircraft carriers. There were no blacks at all during World War II. In fact, the very first black did get his wings in 1948, and that was a guy named Jesse L. Brown, and he went on to serve heroically. I follow in the very big footsteps of the gentlemen who are up here, because they opened, I think, the minds of people who would later on be my flight instructors. So the skepticism that may have met them, I was lucky, that same skepticism didn't meet me. After graduating from the Naval Academy, in my class of around 1,000 graduates, only 2 blacks went on to flight school, and only one of us earned our wings. Today, in 1998, there are only about 2% of the Navy's pilots are black. So that's maybe 320 in this country. So the numbers are still tragically small, and I think, as all these people have already articulated, that education is such a necessary requirement. Looking nowadays for people who want to go into sometimes military aviation, when I visit the high schools, and I got a chance to visit Lindell Brooklyn Park Elementary School, which is probably 2 or 3 miles from where we're sitting here, I remind the middle school students that you need to take Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Calculus 1, 2, and 3, differential equations, and probability and statistics, and then they may let you go near the airplane. So I think that there's a big future out there, but I think it's all of our responsibility to encourage the young people to get that right foundation.
Thank you so much, Jim. Jim is always right on target on some of the issues. I found that out in a minute. My last question I had is for Mr. Sunil Yargin. He is our graduating student. He's graduating, Bachelor of Science degree in aviation at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Let me say that correctly. He's done a lot of good things. Let me ask you, sir, why go forward in a career in aviation as a young person today? Why do it? What's in it for you?
Always giving me the difficult questions. Okay. Well, why do it? Well, when a young person looks up to a pilot, that's a profession that has a lot of prestige. Being a pilot is something that a lot of people say, you're a smart guy, and you're going to make lots of money and all these other great things, and so, but why do it? I'm doing it because my father, he was in the Air Force as an aircraft mechanic, and I looked at him as a role model, and I saw, the things that he did and his life and career in the Air Force, and he became very successful in life. He had a good home, family, basically the American dream. And that's something that I would like for myself, to live the good life. And have, your cars and you have little ones of your own that you can support financially. Very important. So the path that I took was, I guess, a burden on my father, because I'm always, going to him for money when he says, you should go to the Air Force. Your training is cheap. Well, it's not cheap, but it's free, and it'll be better for you. Go to the Air Force. And I looked and I thought about, and I never told him this, but I don't want to be looked on to living in his shadow. He went to the Air Force, and I just had this thing that I don't want to go to the Air Force. Maybe I want to take a different route. And that's what I did. I went to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and when I graduate this coming May, I have a lot of financial debts to pay off. So why do it? It's a prestige profession, and it's just that God look. He's a captain of American Airlines. He is a smart guy, and I can learn a lot from this guy. So.
Okay, very good, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to underestimate our audience. Are there any questions from the audience? Anybody would like to ask? And I'll try to relay to the panelists on here. Yes, ma'am.
Black or African American.
Are there any black or African American female pilots?
Yes.
Well, from a historical point of view, of course, you all know about Bessie Coleman, but there were several other prominent. You all more than likely know about Bessie Coleman, but there are several other prominent black female pilots back in the 30s. Willa Brown, who was the co-operator of the Corker School of Aeronautics back in Chicago, and Jeanette Harmon Bragg, who was a prominent pilot back in the 30s. And there are some others, and their names escape me now. But as far as female pilots are concerned today, we have, I think there are about 2 of them that are captains for major airlines.
I was going to say, just recently, one of the United Airline captains is a black woman. Right. And there are a number, but the challenge is still there like in the other areas. Militarily, we've had an all-black crew, I think it was C-5, flown across into Europe and back. So the opportunities are there. It's all the education and filling. Yes, UPS has a couple of women pilots, and there's first officers and working up to captaincy. And we're talking in an age, when we talked about Tuskegee Airmen, talk about the black experience, the woman in aviation has been segregated just as much as blacks were. Talk to any woman air service pilot in World War II. They didn't even want to recognize them, wouldn't let her wear a uniform. Did a lot of things for our country. So discrimination hasn't always been just black and white. It's even in that case been whites against whites. The opportunities there, we need to work with our youngsters, provide a little money so he can pay off his debts, and, and get some other youngsters out there interested in what you're doing and the opportunities. Could I make one more, just so Airman, I'd like to introduce in your presence here Jerome Hyde. I mentioned that we have an organization that we can bring young people in to carry it in the future. One of our futures, one of our region vice presidents, Jerome Hyde. Raise your hand so they'll know that he's here and works out here with you.
Very good, sir. I'd like to say also we hope to return with a women's history program next month, thinking optimistically, planning-wise on that as well in our diversification efforts here at the MAA. Is there another quick question that we could, sir?
I think that all of us know or heard about the HBO depiction of what you all went through, Tuskegee Airmen. Exactly how accurate was that? Another thing, Colonel McGee, you alluded to, there were some other references, some books that have been written in the past that we might be able to refer to. So how accurate was the HBO depiction, and what other references are there?
Good question. The HBO movie, as movies go, was 2 things. It was not a documentary, It's based on facts, but it's not a documentary, so they take a lot of license in arriving at what they depict. The essence of the experience could not be better acted. It's well done in that point of view. But you cannot take it for factual history as how they came about the various scenes and events through the movie. It's also low cost. They show only one aircraft in there, and I mentioned in my remarks the number of aircraft the 99th flew, because that's the story of the 99th. It's a composite. It's not about any one pilot. But they show only one aircraft, and it would take several hundreds of thousands of dollars to put a movie on today that would show first the P-40, then the P-51. They showed the P-51 all the way through. But the essence of the experience and the facts behind it are good. And I think that answered all the answers.
Any other?
Oh, there are a number. There's books out on general. The first book is called Tuskegee Airmen by Charles Francis. It's had a number of editions available through bookstores. There's a book out on General James. There's a book out by General Davis. There is books, Segregated Skies and Divided Skies, one by Smithsonian, another by the University of Alabama Press. So there are probably a dozen or more good references now on the Tuskegee experience, and probably the best way to catch up nowadays for those, they're dragging me into the computer age, but I guess if you can surf a little bit on the net, there are some web pages that can give you a lot of that answers to that information.
I was just going to mention that the last page, I included probably 10 publications that are very good resources. And as it turns out, almost all those books are sold in this little bookstore right here, this little store. There's also a video that they sell here that does chart the Tuskegee experiment and its actual documentary footage. So there's a lot of good references. There's also an Afro-American